Good afternoon from the 104.5 The Zone studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. The NFL coaching cycle is complete as the New Orleans Saints, according to multiple reports, are finalizing the deal to hire Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore to replace Dennis Allen as the next head coach in New Orleans. Moore helped lead the Eagles to a Super Bowl win as the offensive play caller. Before that was in Dallas, where he played after being drafted out of Boise State. College hoops action tonight. Number 5 Tennessee travels to Lexington to visit 15th-ranked Kentucky. The Vols look to avenge a loss to the Wildcats 2 weeks ago in Knoxville. Tip-off at 6 p.m. Vol Network coverage begins at 5:30 tonight on The Zone. And Vanderbilt remains at home looking to knock off number 1 Auburn. That is also a 6 p.m. tip at Memorial Gym. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-1045. You want to get in on the conversation? Of course, we have the F&M Bank chat on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook Live, wherever you consume your Zone TV. We're constantly monitoring the chat. You know, I like to look and see what the chat is saying. I'll sometimes come in early, go into the producer's studio and just kind of look at Buck's chat to see what everybody's talking about.
Buck's chat, I'm sure that's a hoot there on there, man. What did they say? Anything interesting on there today?
Yeah, was there anything interesting today? I didn't get to the computer this time.
Nothing too crazy.
Nothing too crazy.
Thoughts of running it back with Will Levis.
Yeah, a lot of Will Levis callers when I was driving in were calling in. Probably family members of Will Levis, I would assume.
that was not
Close personal friends.
Close personal friends.
Man,
Buddies
come on,
that he
man.
hangs out with at Barstool Sportsbook downtown.
Oh man, he watch this. He was a 32 player starter in the NFL.
There you go.
Hey man, he's one of 32. That's still pretty good considering.
Yeah. So speaking of quarterbacks, we were talking about, with Buck, and when we were transitioning the shows, we were talking about, is it I mean, it's okay to be critical of Patrick Mahomes, and why is more people not being critical of Patrick Mahomes? And you had said it seems like some voodoo got him, like something got him. Well, I
was spooked, man.
I just retweeted over at the Zach Lyons on Twitter. I just retweeted. There is an Eagles fan being videoed with a Patrick Mahomes voodoo doll constantly poking it throughout the game.
And it was a Mahomes doll?
It was a Mahomes voodoo doll. So I'm sure she got it somewhere down in New Orleans. I'm just saying that would explain a lot. You all may think it's a little crazy.
I think it sounds a little crazy, but it's not that crazy because I know what New Orleans is all about, and that goes on all the time. And people actually talk about that kind of behind the scenes in New Orleans. So I don't know if that's true.
There's a lot of off the street places you can kind of stumble into and get some, dark magic
New Orleans
tools and all that kind of stuff.
Besides the food, you better watch your back there in New Orleans. It's a different spot, but I'm sure that contributed. But man, I just think it was also the offensive line going against the Eagles defense line. Let's not take away all the credit of what they did and what they were doing out there. But he did seem frazzled for whatever. It could have been him getting hit early. Could have been the voodoo, put a curse on him or something like that. Because you always thought, okay, this is Mahomes. Second half, I waited to say, okay, let me watch this first drive. Let me see what he does now. Because usually he and Andy Reid make some form of adjustments.
Right.
And in my mind, I didn't see it. And I said, oh, this is over. And I really, halfway through the third quarter, I kind of really stopped paying attention. Like, I was all in, paying attention for every single play and critiquing everything. But after that, I just I start, grabbing some snacks, talking to, some friends that are there. We're watching the game. And so, I kind of checked out because I didn't think there was a shot of them winning the game if I didn't see some form of Mahomes and Andy Reid calling plays better. than I've seen thus far during the game. So I kind of
And
take
you
that.
just-
So I don't know if it was the voodoo or just the Eagles players.
There was no Andy Reid voodoo doll, so
Yeah, that is true. He called bad plays.
Yeah.
He got. Well, I'm gonna just say this. He got out coached.
Yeah.
And that's very rare in Andy Reid. I think you mentioned it, but him running the football, just having balance. And I think what happens sometimes when you're calling plays is you kind of go through this, kind of, I don't want to call it panic, but it's some form of panic because nothing's working. It happened to the Titans numerous times this year.
And it's like he couldn't figure out a way to settle the team down.
And he should have just run the football. But I think when they did try one, they would lose yardage. So I think he just panicked a little bit and said, I'm going to give it to my best player and see what he can do and make plays, Mahomes. Even Travis, Kelsey didn't even look the same either. Usually, you have a lot of excitement early on in the game and you may have a drop, but then after that, it's over.
Well, did you hear what was being said about that last night? About Travis Kelsey? Is that apparently the booze Taylor Swift got, according to sources, affected his mindset?
Yeah. Well, then if it did, then he has a weak
retire.
mindset.
That's what I would say.
He has a weak mindset.
I mean,
he can't let that happen.
because that whole sideline was just weird.
Yeah.
But
he didn't play well at all.
Here's the thing: is like, why are you letting that affect you? Philadelphia Eagles fans are going to boo, and because some people try to make it political, but give me a break. Yeah. It's the Eagles. Well, it's the Eagles fans, and let me say they booed Santa Claus. They're going to boo Taylor Swift.
Well, let's talk about the genesis of this. Jackson can fact check me on this, or whoever's back there. I can't see. Bananas.
Joseph.
I think Swift is from Pennsylvania.
That is true.
And then she switched as a fan of being the Chiefs and not the Philadelphia Eagles. And that's when they showed her picture. They booed.
Right.
So I with hearing all that, I was like, well, okay, they're going to boo this. The Eagles. Yeah, of course.
They would probably boo her
City of
anyway.
brotherly love?
Even if maybe she was a Detroit fan and then switched to, which, by the way, shouldn't she be a Titans fan? Like, why was she an Eagles
she
fan?
moved here.
Yeah.
But I think she is born and raised from Pennsylvania, somewhere there about in her earlier years. Tell me if I'm wrong or right, Jack.
No, you're correct. She's from Pennsylvania.
Okay, gotcha.
See, and that's why I think they booed her, not necessarily because
well,
all the things around the game.
No, it was, listen, they're Eagles fans. We have seen many instances of Eagles fans being the worst people imaginable. And they decided to boo her. They would have booed her even if she was Blake Lively, who dated.
But that put an extra little salt on there. Being, for
the fact that this apparently really got under the skin of Travis Kelsey.
I think he's just talking madness.
But why would you even want to put that out there?
Ask him, and then he would be, that really bothered me. Just think, that probably went really well at the house that night.
And it was just...
Hey, what is he supposed to say? So tell me what he should have said.
Okay, so I don't know what he was specifically asked about, but I would say, hey, listen... That's what you get. That's what happens when you play against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right. But
I'm not going to say it affected me.
Right. No way. And to me, that's down. And where I'm going.
Get down in there.
That Rhoda Will Levis of making excuses for your performance when you didn't play well, even though you was out there. Yeah. So that was just there was no reason for him to say anything in regard
It's like
to
when
that
DeAndre Hopkins switched it to the talk about the refs. Well, I don't hear you guys talking about the refs now. Right. Patrick Mahomes, on the other hand, stood up there for 13 minutes answering all the questions. One guy has a Super Bowl ring, the other guy doesn't. So we're right out there.
Well, I don't know if that justifies anything just because you have won.
Well, I'm just saying, he stood for 13 minutes answering questions taking on the responsibility.
You knew he was going to take responsibility, but he knew he had to because
they were shook.
Yeah, they
were shook. Andy Reid shook. Patrick Mahomes shook. Travis Kelsey shook. Your big three guys on offense were all shook to a certain point. And to me, I look at it and I go, man, I don't know. Maybe it's the voodoo dolls. Maybe there were multiple voodoo dolls in the stadium and we only saw one of them.
I'm going to say one thing that wasn't voodoo. I went back and watched a couple plays, and they got their butts whooped in the trenches. It just so happened I saw this one play. Trey Smith is pulling, and he gets annihilated by the defensive end. It was the team number guy, 19 or whoever it was. He hit him straight in the bow and almost like it looked like he was in a wrestling match and got destroyed, and then the back got hammered. And I'm like, well, if this is what's going on there. No wonder they got smacked. I mean, he hit him dead. I mean, just think now, Trey Smith was pulling. Defensive end went and got him. I'm like in a two-step window, bang. I mean, it had Trey Smith like this, and I'm like, wow.
Eagles defensive line was fearless.
Player now.
Yeah.
Trey Smith, you can say what you want to say about footwork and all that.
The first sack he allowed all year was in the Super Bowl.
Like, woo, dang, that hurt me watching. I said, I'm done. This is it. This is how they got beat. They were sending messages almost like they bullied the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Really, to be all honest. I mean, man, I was like, whoa. This looks a little intimidating.
Yeah. The Eagles came to play, and they came to play on the defensive line. They came to play at the edge. And looking at it, you have to say that, like, as much as you want to say about Joe Thuney's great career as a guard, maybe not addressing left tackle a little bit better in the middle of the season.
All season. Yeah, he did.
And maybe that was a little bit of hubris.
A little too much.
Because you're going up against the best defensive line unit, including edge rushers, in the NFL more than likely. I would put them on par with almost anybody. I can't think of many teams I would take the combination of their front defensive line and their edge rushers over the Eagles.
Did you think that they were that good going into the game?
I did, because I did think the big.
I thought they were good, but not like that.
To me, well, maybe not that good, but if you watch the playoffs, they were winning a lot with four. And if you could win with four against the Kansas City Chiefs, you were automatically more than likely going to win, unless the Chiefs made the proper adjustments, which they didn't make. Really, it seemed like any kind of adjustments on the fly in that game. But like they came to play in the Super Bowl, right? That's what it felt like. Like one team showed up to play in the Super Bowl. The other side of the football kind of just showed up for another regular season game. Like the Eagles, they played with a chip on their shoulder. They played with an edge. The Chiefs did not. On the offense. I mean, I'm not going to give much. I'm not going to discredit that defense and try to lump them in with the offense, the Chiefs defense. But they came in and they had that edge and they rocked the Kansas City Chiefs. Wow. Now, building that to get to that edge took time. So when we come back, we're going to talk about, I want to go a little bit deeper into why everybody's takeaway about this game when it comes to the Tennessee Titans is wrong. And we're going to talk about that. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone.
Hey, folks, you know I've been talking about Tennessee Orthopedic Alliance for years because they're the leading experts in sports medicine and performance and the team physician for the NFL, college, and high school athletics across Tennessee. And TOA provides sports medicine coverage to more high school and college sports teams than any orthopedic group in the state of Tennessee. They have 29 locations throughout the state and over 100 physicians throughout Middle and East Tennessee to take care of all your musculoskeletal needs. And TOA has 11 urgent care locations with walk-in availability 7 days a week. They offer direct access to sports medicine and performance, physical therapy, and nutrition, personalized rehabilitation plans to enhance mobility, reduce pain, and improve overall physical function for patients recovering from injuries or surgeries. And TOA also offers sports performance training, a specialized program designed to enhance athletic performance and provide tailored training solutions for athletes at all levels. So please check out their services at TOA.com for more information. That's TOA.com.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Door. 615-737-1045. You want to get in on the conversation. And Blaine, of course, when the Super Bowl happens and everything, everybody tries to apply lessons learned to their team. Okay, so here's what our team needs to do, because this obviously wins you the Super Bowl. This is what we got to do. And for the Tennessee Titans fans, I think that if you came away from this game saying you got to select Abdul Carter, saying you have to select a quarterback, or saying, just take best player available or whatever, I don't think that's the right takeaway from the Super Bowl. And I look at this Super Bowl team, these Eagles, and I brought it up yesterday, and I think your biggest takeaway should be we got to be patient. The Eagles haven't always been perennial contenders. Over time, they built it. They've gone through a myriad of coaches under Howie Roseman, including Andy Reid, but then Chip Kelly and Pat Shurmur took over for Chip Kelly, and then Doug Peterson and all this stuff. They've gone through a lot. But at the same time, they've always been patient and steadfast and have built up what they are trying to do and establish. And we played some stuff from Eric DeCosta last week. That their analytics department's been around since 2013. It takes time. And I think for the Tennessee Titans fan base, you got to be patient. This very rarely do situations take a quick turnaround in one season. It can happen, but it's one of those things where it takes a magical offseason where everything hits for your team.
Yeah, well, I mean, naturally, it's a phase no different than coaching, where you hire all these offensive coordinators and you're trying to duplicate what they've done now. Everybody's situation is so different, so you got to figure out where you're at to see and mimic some of the things that they do. You're not going to always be able to do that. It's just like coaches. You can't just try to then all of a sudden, that's why all the guys that leave Belichick, that, try to mimic him. Well, you don't have the rings, you don't have the gravitas of who you are yet until you win. So I think you also need to do some research. I don't know how this can go about, but talking to other coaches where you kind of can get inside the locker room a little bit and take you through when they had adversity, what happened, because Philadelphia media is all over. Remember, they wanted to fire Sirianni, I think, week 4 or 5 early in the season. And how they overcame that, and then what did that bring them closer? What were some of your teaching or coaching tactics that you use? Also, let alone, maybe we don't have someone as talented as Roseman as our GM. So you say, okay, but one thing you do see here is that they built through the draft and they added different pieces along the way to, all going down the same road. That's one thing that was clear. So I think those are things you kind of look at, and do you have to be patient if you're going to build through the draft? Oh, absolutely. Especially a team like the Titans who, they're at the bottom now.
Because the Eagles have never really had a roster, at least that I can remember.
Like this.
I mean, listen, I've seen a lot of Eagles teams
in the NFL.
Right. But I've never, even during the down times of the Philadelphia Eagles, they've never had a roster as devoid of talent as the Tennessee Titans do. This is a question, or this is kind of a conversational topic that me and Stoney had in our 7-hour drive down to Mobile, was I think that Tennessee Titans fans historically overrate their own players. And what I mean by that is that the worst that I've seen of the Philadelphia Eagles roster would probably be a top 10 roster for the Tennessee Titans when you take those players and put them over here. The Tennessee Titans rosters and players that leave historically don't really do much elsewhere, right? You go and look, A.J. Brown is probably the most successful post-Tennessee Titans career that we've seen, and he was really young. But you remember, and I liked Avery Williamson, but I remember when Avery Williamson left free agency to the New York Jets, if I'm not mistaken, everybody was going crazy. How could you let Avery Williamson leave? How could you let Avery Williamson leave? And he never did anything. David Long had one good year with the Miami Dolphins, and then he's floating around the abyss of free agency and hopping from team to team. The Tennessee Titans don't have, when you start looking at the NFL rosters of teams that make the playoffs, this Tennessee Titans team is devoid of talent. And it's going to be a long time for them to replenish the cupboard the right way. Not going out and buying talent and collecting talent. To do it the right way, you have to do it through the draft.
Well, I could look at it on the other side of that, just to be a devil's advocate here and say that the Titans did the right decisions by letting most of those players go because they had kind of peaked and thought, well, you know what, we can replace them with maybe another average player. So I don't know if every case and every situation is his own situation. They let Derrick Henry go, and he did really well. He said, so what they try to do is when you're starting this league, they try to get the value for your position, let alone how well you are as a player and what age you are at as a player. And then that determines a little bit of your future, and especially when you're a elite guy. Like Derrick Henry. So they try to time it up when, okay, you're over 30. Guess what? Usually the elite player, especially at running back, starts having the downward ticks. They try to stay ahead of the curve and say, I don't think we want to take this risk, let alone we are going to rebuilding. How about that? Would you want to be part of that, Derrick Henry? Probably not. So I think every situation is different. As the roster now at the lowest of the low and with the talent, oh, absolutely. But at the same time, I think this is the worst I've ever seen it. There was a time I think when
maybe 2015 is probably worse.
Depletion.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the lowest of the low. Hey, you got to build up through the draft, but you also got to identify talent. And sometimes that means drafting a guy. Maybe you don't need that position. But guess what? You need that talent because you got to have it. And they're better than the actual guy you have, even though it's not a need. And to me, this is where you're going to have to make some real strategic decisions. To me, if I'm really watching a team and build from the ground up, I'm going to go back, as you mentioned weeks ago, Detroit Lions. Because sometimes people made fun of some of their draft picks because they didn't need them. Gibbs is one of them. Yeah. You don't need a running back. You signed Montgomery, the guy from it. Guess what? I know he's a baller, though. I know he's good.
I thought he was better than Bijan Robinson, but that's just me.
Right. He's definitely faster.
But I'm definitely crazy in the minority on that one.
I don't know if he's that good, but he is definitely electric. There's no question about it. So, so sometimes you got to do that and sacrifice for a better player. And I remember they drafted a linebacker. And then they were like, they don't need linebackers. They already got enough. No, well, guess what? That guy's better than the other guy.
Yeah. It's all about improving your team in spots, even when people think you don't need one. That's why you take best player available.
That's why patience is going to be a part of this. But at the same time, you want to see growth, too.
Yeah.
Because you want to be excited about, we're getting close there, and then we just now need to get our final little pieces. We're not there yet. So we're going to see after this free agency and draft with the new administration that they have up top, see if it
what do they value?
Works.
Right? Because what do they value in a player? What do they value in position? How do they play their free agency board against their draft board? How do they marry?
What if they want to trade back with the first pick, but then they don't have any, people who want to give them enough, so then they have to take. What will they take? Will they take a quarterback, or will they take a pass rusher? Will they take a cornerback? Will they take a wide receiver? We don't know. We sure wait and see, but man, you got to acquire elite talent.
And here's the thing. We talk about building through the trenches, and I kind of pulled up some information on the Eagles' offensive line. We talked about what their Super Bowl offensive line was last year. But everybody's like, well, you got to draft a quarterback into a good situation, so you got to have a good offensive line. Okay, that's true. You need to have a good offensive line, but you can do both at the same time.
Well, I think they only have one first-round pick. I think a couple third, fourth-round picks, and then some later-round guys,
too. That's my thing. So back in 2015, before they traded up for Carson Wentz, right? They had an undrafted free agent in Jason Peters, which is insane to think about right now. That is he the best undrafted free agent ever? Alan Barber, who is a fourth-round pick. Jason Kelce, a sixth-round pick. Matt Tobin, an undrafted free agent. And Lane Johnson, a first-round pick. Then in 2016, when they have Carson Wentz, they still have Jason Peters, undrafted free agent. Stephen Wisniewski, who's a second-round pick. Jason Kelce, sixth-round pick. Brandon Brooks, third-round pick. And then Halev Vatai, who is a fifth-round pick, and Lane Johnson, who I've already said is a first-round pick. Kind of split that left out. Now, here's the thing. I like Bill Callahan. I think he's a very talented, very good offensive line coach. But can I say something? Why is Jeff Stoutland I don't recall ever him being interviewed for a head coaching job.
Well, I said this yesterday. I said he is better than our line coach. I'm sorry, because you see their guys develop and get better.
And he doesn't do it with just first-round picks.
Watch this, though. Who's the guy that replaced Kelce at center?
Cam Jurgens.
What round did he go?
Second round pick, if I'm not mistaken.
In his first year as a starter, what did he make? Pro Bowl and All Pro.
Yeah.
All Pro means you're the best in the world.
And people thought they wouldn't be able to do the tush push without Jason Kelsey, and what they turn around and do, the tush push with Cam Jurgens.
They made good calls, bringing him
Yes.
back in. I mean, even last year,
Right.
even if they tried to work with Dillard. They knew when they had Dillard, they tried to move him to guard.
Yeah.
Like, he can't even do that. See?
But I'm just saying, I love Bill Callahan, and he's gotten a head coaching job. The fact that Jeff Stoutland hasn't even been interviewed for a head coaching job that I can remember, and maybe I've missed one here and there back in 2015 or something, that I can remember, is kind of weird. Like, why has this guy not
Well, you
gotten
don't
an
know
interview?
what his motives are. If
Yeah,
he wants to be
maybe
a
he
head
just
coach.
loves being
And
here.
Bill Callahan was actually with the Raiders.
Yeah, as a head coach.
already, and they moved,
Yeah.
elevated
Then they
him.
elevated him as
So
well.
that was within.
But like, I kind of look at it and I go, what is going on here that this guy's not even gotten an interview? And maybe you're right. Maybe the motives are that he is comfortable being the best offensive line coach in the NFL. Because when you really start diving into it, consistently he does more with less.
Less, yes.
And Bill Callahan does more with more.
Mm-hmm.
So
Higher picks.
So now when you start breaking it down, how do the Tennessee Titans fix the right? Do they have to go out and get a former first round pick? Do they have to sign a former first round pick? And that's the thing. I'm not trying to diminish anything about Bill Callahan's career, but when you start looking at the information and start looking at the pedigree of the players that are being used when you take Jeff Stoutland versus Bill Callahan, it's a no-brainer. Jeff Stoutland's the better offensive line coach.
Oh, I said this during the season.
Yeah.
Because I don't understand. MPF wasn't high on my list, but he went backwards. Sorry.
Yeah.
The only guy that got better to me was Skoronski. Even at the later end of the season, Latham got worse than where he started.
And what does Peter Skoronski have in common with what we just talked about? He was a first-round pick.
Right. So, so the development of players when they're not as high of a pick or as talented really tells you how good of a coach you are to me. When you get talent, man, and these guys are high first, second round picks, man, well, those are the easier guys to coach as far as their talent. Now they got to buy into the coaching. So you got to also know the people and who they are. But most of them want to have success. Obviously, if they've gotten to that level of first and second round pick, they all want to get paid too. So someday, they're going to get paid as long as they continue to grow and get better. So
I love that now that we have said that there's one person better than Bill Callahan at offensive line coach. The chat has already said, "Oh, so you guys think Bill Callahan sucks?" We didn't say that. This is where critical listening skills come in. We're
never going to get that in
We're
the
never
chat.
going to get critical listening
No,
skills.
not on the chat. Not on the chat. You just got to know what you're dealing with now.
Yeah. So what we're saying is that, yes, Bill Callahan is still one of the best offensive line coaches, but a lot of people put him as the best. And I'm saying right now, Jeff Stoutland is the best. Yeah. And so now that goes into how do you attack the two holes at the offensive line, right? Do you go and sign a former first-round pick? Like, here's my concern with this, right? We saw Lloyd Cushenberry kind of take a dip and he was a third-round pick. If you bring in Trey Smith, where's the dip? Is there going to be a dip with Trey Smith at right guard? He's a sixth-round pick. Again, the NFL is just kind of funny this way, how this works, right? These trends and little things, for whatever reason, matters in the NFL more than maybe other sports. But, like, what happens? Is Trey Smith going to rise to is the Trey Smith and Bill Callahan marriage going to work, or do you need to invest in maybe an older former first round pick? Because, I mean, at the end of the day,
if we got to do all that, then he ain't the guy. Then I mean,
right.
we better be able to say, hey, look, we're going to sign this guy. What are your thoughts on him? But when I say we're going to sign this guy, we're going to sign him. But I still want to get your input as a coach. And so what do you see, good or bad or indifferent, or, what do you see his holes in his game? But at the same time, is it good for us to sign a guard, or is it easier through the draft to get a guard, or is it easier to get the right tackle? I think those are all kind of determined once you sign free agency, because if you sign Trey Smith, then you're saying, okay, we fixed one of the holes. We're going to probably try to in free agency, or maybe get a veteran guy for just in case the guy's not quite ready, even if we draft him.
Hopefully it's not Leroy Watson or Jerron Christian. Like, get a real backup right tackle. You get what I'm saying?
What? Here's what I'm going to say about that. if you were a coach and you brought guys from another team and then
That you formerly coached.
And then both of those guys are not on the team, what do you think about that coach? See, these are little tea leaves that people should be watching. Like, one guy basically quit. He retired. Then another guy, what happened with him? He decided he got cut.
Yeah.
He wasn't playing up to snuff. These are guys that that coach handpicked because he knew those guys, and they weren't good enough. So was his judgment wrong? Or did those guys just kind of, and then they didn't get paid, so it wasn't like, oh, we got paid, they got the money now, I'm just relaxing.
Yeah, it's not like you paid him, $30 million over the course of the contract.
Or was he wrong in identifying who those players were? Now, we could say with the Browns, they did do a halfway solid, decent job. So what happened?
Right. That's what is maybe it's a marriage between the scheme and what Bill Callahan coaches. Maybe what he coaches jives better with Kevin Stefanski's scheme. That could be something else that you could kind of look into, is that maybe there's going to have to be adjustments to the scheme.
So who's telling who? Which Callahan's telling who what to
do? Someone's going to have to say it. Sometimes you have to have uncomfortable conversations with family.
Yeah, that is true, but I don't know,
and maybe
man.
it is there's also the point of letting the coaches run amok by deciding who they want and where they're bringing, and you're leaning too much in it. Because sometimes as a general manager, you got to say no.
That does happen.
And maybe they lean too much into, Bill Callahan can fix it, right? Bill Callahan can do whatever. And Bill Callahan is an offensive line genius, a god. Like, he is an offensive line genius. There is no doubt about it. And he is one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. But at the end of the day, this still goes back to the point of even what Kyle Shanahan learned as a Atlanta Falcons offensive coordinator. Players matter more. And if you aren't getting the right players and aren't evaluating the players correctly and assessing them correctly, and part of that is with the general manager, not just the coaches, but also the general manager, then you're going to have a tough time. So at the end of the day, I look at it and I go, this is really now a Mike Bergonzi issue. What is Mike Bergonzi and Chad Brinker? What does their process tell them about this offensive line?
Well, then that means you're not listening to your coaches. You listening, but you're
listening, but you got to make ultimately the decisions fall at the feet of the general manager.
Yeah, so some things may get a little shuffled up around here. He has a different evaluation, especially coming from somewhere else, about how good these players are. And maybe that's where it starts, on evaluating them correctly and give them the correct grade and not the grade that is, he's satisfactory. No, that's not good enough.
Yeah, because you have pro scouts. Everybody thinks the scouts are just college scouts. No, you have pro scouts. So what are your pro scouts saying about Trey Smith, right? What is Mike Bergonzi saying about Trey Smith? What does he know behind the scenes? And again, the only sack Trey Smith has allowed now for the 2024 season, postseason and regular season, was in the Super Bowl. So how much is everybody going to start weighing that now? That is Trey Smith just a Kansas City thing? Is Trey Smith a really great offensive guard that deserves to get paid top of the market? That's the questions everybody's going to be asking themselves right now. Much like what happened with Sam Darnold, right? The last two games of Sam Darnold kind of skewed the perception of his market. Does this final game skew the perception of Trey Smith? I mean, it's a legitimate question. I don't think it does, but it is a question that you have to weigh and you have to ask.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. And I'm going to use it against him in negotiations, for sure. That's what this game is all about. That's not to say he's not a really good player, but, hey, I'm trying to get the best deal possible for the team that I'm on. And if he wants to come here and wants to be back somewhat home, why not? Let's try to make it work. But we're not going to force it, and we're not going to pay you the top of the market. I had to get that out the way right off the bat to his agent. This is not where we're at.
But, I mean, again,
got to blow smoke.
You got to blow some smoke, It's part of negotiations, right?
It is. Oh, yeah.
It's not like those negotiations happen all year round, right? Like, I mean, I know there's a legal tampering period and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, you kind of look at it and you go, all these agents are, because like at the Combine, right? We know that at the Combine, the agents and the coaches and the general managers are all at like a couple of different bars and they're all hanging out. They're all talking shop.
Yeah.
So while it may not be considered, maybe that's still considered tampering, the fact that everybody does it at one period, that's when you start hearing the real rumors pop up is at the Combine.
Yeah, that is very true. But sometimes it's right. Sometimes you're going to blow up smoke and blow smoke up people's you know what to get where you need to be. And, and sometimes the player isn't prepared, and they need to prepare players to, to understand what's going to happen here in the negotiations and whether you like it or not. And because they're going to make up lies about you. Sometimes that doesn't even come public, but just to say, oh well, he doesn't play hard, or he's really not as good as the market is saying, and that's how they're trying to gain leverage when they don't have any.
Yeah.
So you just got to look at it from that perspective, and eventually you get to where you need to be. If not, they'll find another option that is cheaper for what they're looking for, and best for you to move on. So that's how it works. So we shall see. I'm not going to judge a player off of one game. That's just not what I do. To me, because everybody's going to have a bad game. Guess what? It's the best versus the best. So you got to know that you're going to have a bad game. That's just the nature of the business.
Yep.
I don't care who you are. Tom Brady to go to, Jerry Rice
Well,
to
we just saw Patrick Mahomes do it.
Patrick Mahomes.
Are you now not going to, want Patrick Mahomes on your
Right,
team?
exactly. See, so that's kind of how I look at it. I look at the whole body of work, and I said this before about Sam Darnold. So that would be my concerning part. So if I am going to go down a road with Sam Darnold, I got to make sure I don't overpay. Like, okay, he had a good year. He's shown glimpses of this before. But why haven't we seen on a consistent basis? Is it because of the people and players around him?
Yeah.
Was it the system? I'd love to know what their thoughts were. Or is it just he finally reached his talent and settled down at the quarterback spot? And then, when he got overwhelmed, he just took a lot of sacks and just didn't look the same. And he just didn't want to make a mistake. Or, was it all on him?
Right.
Like, there's all mechanisms to a quarterback of why things happen. I thought he should have thrown a couple of those away for sure in the NFC game that he played in the playoffs. So that would be more my concern. So I'm not going to overpay. I'm not getting past 40 million. You said Mayfield had 33.
Yeah, 33.
I'd love to be around 35 with
Yeah.
Sam Darnold. If we're going to sign him to a multi-year, 3-4 year deal, that's as far as I can go. Now you can say that if you want to, but if
the Raiders come a calling.
right, if the market keeps increasing. Whether it's the Raiders or the Giants or whoever, maybe it could be even the Browns. I have no idea. Even though what's there, Watson. Is that okay? What is my limit? I must know that going into negotiation, and then what is my B plan?
Right.
See, who's the other target in free agency at quarterback if available? If not, then you know what's going to happen with that first pick.
Well, we're talking about the first pick. We're talking about smoke. We're going to talk about all the smoke surrounding that first round pick that came out over the weekend. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone. Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-1045. Next hour, we'll be joined by Coach Mack for his weekly Mack Attack, brought to you by Two Rivers Ford. And, of course, you guys can talk to us on the F&M Bank Chat on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook Live, wherever you consume your Zone TV. And over the weekend, there was a couple of rumors popped up. Ian Rappaport talked about it, and Dan Graziano of ESPN talked about it, about could the Titans trade out of the number 1 pick. And here's what Dan Graziano had to say. There's still a long way to go until April's draft and a lot of evaluations to make before then. But I've talked to multiple people who think the Titans could trade out of the top pick and look for their quarterback solution elsewhere. That could mean either another shot for Will Levis, which we talked about on this show last week, or adding young free agents such as Sam Darnold or Justin Fields. I think only one of those are in play for this team, and that would be Sam Darnold. The thinking is that the Titans roster needs are so extensive that unless they're absolutely sold on one of the quarterbacks as a franchise changer, they're better off seeing what teams would be willing to offer for the pick. If they move back to number 2 or number 3, or even to number 6 or number 7 to the Raiders and Jets, they could still land a franchise cornerstone player in the first round and be in position to address quarterback in next year's draft if necessary. All that to say, nobody knows anything. I mean, that's really what it really comes down to, is that nobody knows anything right now. This is way too early information. Now, I do share it because I think the information needs to be, you kind of like keep track of the information, right? Keep track of the nuggets, how things change, how the tone changes between reporting throughout the year. That's kind of what gives you a good sense. But the fact that other people around the league think that the Titans could trade out, to me means that there is a market for people to trade up and for the Titans to trade out of that number 1 pick if they're so inclined to want to do it.
Well, you got to remember, this is a season of lies.
It is the Lion season.
During the draft. And I think the Titans are making a grave mistake at this point in time. They should have already announced that they are putting out their fillers, not announced, putting out fillers that they're going to take one of these quarterbacks. And actually, you can name them by name. It didn't matter, whoever you want to say, because you want people to be just clamoring for that spot. So I don't know if they're playing this right or wrong, but to me, that's how I would be playing this. Right now, they're playing like, well, we haven't really, sat down and talked to Ward, or we've met Shador.
So you're saying they're slow playing it too much? Yeah,
and I would not be slow playing this. I want people to know that I'm taking a quarterback, even though I'm not. Because I want them to be clamoring, and whether it's 1 or 2. All I need is 1, let alone 2 teams think that they need to get in that spot to get their guy.
Yeah, because all it takes is 1 team, to be honest with you, right?
Because if
that
picks.
1 team thinks that maybe the Giants or the Browns or someone in front of them wants a quarterback too, they're like, man, that team could draft my guy. And you have conviction that one of these guys is your guys, all it takes is that 1 team to believe that, right?
Yeah, man. And I'm trying to fill this roster with holes. So I just think I kind of would. All right, think about this. When Bryce Young was coming out, it was him and C.J. Stroud, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, C.J. Stroud, same. Right. Anthony Richardson, Will
We
Levis.
all knew the Panthers was taking
Bryce
Young, right? When did we find that out?
Very, very early.
See,
kind of like Caleb Williams and the Bears.
That's what I'm getting at.
Right?
So,
we knew for forever that they were taking Caleb Williams.
Right. You even knew C.J. Stroud was going to be probably the second quarterback taken.
So even if you think that even if they don't really like Cam Ward, they probably should have gone ahead and put out the Cam Ward propaganda or Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, right. It doesn't matter. Whatever one you would have choose, yes, I would have. Because you may get in a situation where you're still sitting there and you go, I still don't want to draft a quarterback. I'm still not all in on either one of these guys. So then you end up going to take either Hunter or Carter or whoever it may be. And so then now you're sitting there and now you're talking about straight criticism for not taking a quarterback. So now I don't care who they sign in free agency. There's still going to be, unless you get a boatload, then nobody has a conversation. So I just, man, I know how it works. The combine, it should really heat up on fillers and rumors about who the Titans are going to take. If it's not done by then, man, I think we're just, kind of just staying close to the vest. And I don't know if I'd be doing that because you win either way if you put it out there.
Right.
That's why you have to. That's what I'm
interesting because I would kind of take the approach of kind of teasing it out a little bit. Because if you take a
well, I'm not talking about being overly aggressive. Then people are going to think, oh no, that's not happening.
Then I might as well not call.
But what I'm getting at is, do what they did with Bryce Young. We can't say the Panthers organization is one of the sharpest tooths in the nail now. I mean, so they did it, and everybody knew who they were going to take.
Yeah.
So I think they should be approaching it.
But they also took that guy.
Right. Well, it doesn't matter. They don't know if you're serious or not. Guess what they do know? You need a quarterback.
Yeah.
They do know that. And you could take one and sign one in free agency. See?
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll do that.
So you think that the rumors need to start getting a little bit heavier? Because there are rumors about Cam Ward, right?
Uh-huh.
So there are, everybody assumes that if they were to take a quarterback, it's going to be Cam Ward. Now, obviously, we've heard that, well, we haven't watched Cam Ward and we haven't talked Cam Ward and we got to do that and all this kind of stuff. So you think they're slow playing it too much? They could probably put out a few more rumors out there.
Yeah, I would say so. Whether you're going to take them or not, because you win either way. That's why I said.
Because I'm like, someone should be reporting, okay, so like
Diana Rossini,
or Tom Pelissero, who we know kind of have something with Chad Brinker and Mike Bergonzi going on in this situation.
With somebody in the front office.
Yeah. Someone in the front office should be putting out there like, well, it sounds like to me the Tennessee Titans look like they're zeroing in on the quarterback.
One of these quarterback. Yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about. Those little things there to prep people. This is what's coming.
Yeah,
they not doing that.
It'll be interesting.
You don't like that tack? You don't like how would you approach it?
No, because like at the end of the day, how many people are, I guess, concrete in their evaluation before the combine? On these quarterbacks.
Oh, but you got to get the teasers going.
Got to get the teasers going. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree, but we'll talk more about this when we come back. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone.
Teaser.
2 o'clock on the dot. Good afternoon. I'm Jackson Williams from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. In NFL news today, the New Orleans Saints have officially named Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore as their next head coach. Moore, fresh off a Super Bowl in which the Eagles scored 40 points against the Chiefs, now takes over in NOLA. Former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley is a serious candidate to become Moore's defensive coordinator, according to multiple reports. Staley spent last season as the 49ers assistant head coach. In college hoops tonight, number 5 Tennessee heads on the road to number 15 Kentucky. Vols look to avenge their 78-73 loss to the Wildcats from earlier this year. Tip-off is at 6 p.m. You can catch the Vol Network coverage right here on The Zone starting at 5:30. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, you need to visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors, 615-737-1045. We were talking about, creating a market for the trade value of the number 1 overall pick. And Dane Brugler today, Blaine, came out with his top 100 big board. And I thought it was interesting where the quarterbacks ranked among the top 100, but also where they ranked compared to each other. Right now, he has Cam Ward ranked as the 15th overall best player in this draft. Then he has Shedeur Sanders ranked 25th overall. So you're talking about, when we're sitting here talking about the ability to trade up and fall in love with one of these quarterbacks, you're talking about a team that's going to have to trade up for right now, where they're at, the 15th and 25th best player available. Now, there is the quarterback draft that's in relation to the actual draft. There's always 2 drafts involved. Mm-hmm. But I thought that was interesting. But it gets really interesting after that. Jackson Dart made his top 100 at 57. So he has Shedeur Sanders at 25, then 57. 2 spots down is Tyler Shuck from Louisville. He's moved Tyler Shuck up to 59 on his big board, Dane Brugler. Now, listen. A lot of this stuff is his tape study, his personal tape study, but it's also what he's hearing from around the league. So that's why you kind of want to pay attention a little bit to Dane Brugler. Jalen Milroe is behind Tyler Shuck at 61. And then after that is Will Howard at 84. So notable quarterbacks that did not make it, Quinn Ewers and Kyle McCord did not crack the top 100. So I thought that was a little interesting when you're talking about these quarterback prospects, how far Jalen Milroe has fallen over the course of the offseason, even from the beginning of playoffs or November to now. Because if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that Dane Brugler was pretty high on Jalen Milroe in the middle of the college season, and now he's got him all the way down to 61, which I thought was crazy.
Well, I'd love for him to come out with a ranking right after the season's up in the regular season there before the playoffs for college, because I think that would have changed a little bit. We all saw him have his issues with throwing the football and his accuracy on intermediate passing game. And, sometimes that was even sharp passing game. So I'm not surprised, but I still believe that he probably has the most upside if he can figure it out as a passer because of his running ability. And he has a strong arm, so all those things there. He just needs to work on his mechanics, and it's going to take time. And, athletes are built on muscle memory, and it's hard to change what you've been doing for years. So it's not just that easy where you can change your throwing motion where it connects with your feet and make it happen. You have to do these reps over and over and over again until you buy in. That's without stress, and I call stress pass rushers. That's against air.
Right.
So then that brings a whole nother caveat to it all. So it's not as easy as people want to make it seem, but he has some upside. And some people are going to look at it like it's worth the risk, especially if you have time. Like if you were, a veteran team, you had a veteran quarterback, let's say like Stafford. Let's see if he's your quarterback. You say, I got 2 years to buy myself. You give him an extension, Stafford. Say, hey, look, he'll see how it's done. And then you continue to develop as a passer, and hopefully we can get you there. That's kind of where he sits to me. So he's going to end up going to a good team. It may help him.
I mean, to be honest, that's how I feel about all these quarterbacks in general. I would love, and obviously, like we talked about a few weeks ago, because you draft someone first overall, the expectation is they have to start.
It changes.
But I would think that everybody on this list could benefit from sitting a year. But I do specifically think that's the case for everybody after Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward. I definitely think Jackson Dart, Will Howard, Kyle McCord, Tyler Shook, all these guys, Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, all these guys could benefit from sitting behind a veteran quarterback. Because we got to remember, Jalen Hurts sat behind Carson Wentz. Now, again, Carson Wentz is probably not the best quarterback that you want, as your veteran bridge or whatever, but that benefited Jalen Hurts. And look at Jalen Hurts now. So it's all about what benefits your young quarterback. And a lot of these guys would really, truly benefit from sitting a year.
Right. Well, I mean, you kind of go into it with an open eye, like, hey, our expectation is he probably won't start. But
if you win,
but if you see during training camp that he's the better player and he's ready, then don't be afraid to let it go.
Right.
So the plan then diverts to the natural plan, what your eyeballs are actually seeing now. He has progressed over the mini camps, OTAs, and now in training camp to the preseason to right now, you know what? I think he's ready. Or, you know what? 2 or 3 games in, so he gets to see it. If our veteran quarterback falters or gets injured, I think he'll be ready.
Yeah.
So I'm cool with having that mindset, but don't stick to your guns based off of his development. If he is developing, don't hold back. If there's an opportunity,
right. And that's really how you got to look at it, too. Now, we've been talking about building a roster, building players, and all that stuff. Part of that, Blaine, comes through the waiver period, right? The waiver wire and stuff like that. The NFL's waiver period for the 2025 league year began yesterday. That means that any player from now through week 3 of the regular season, the waiver order will mirror the draft order. The Titans have top priority on all waived players for the next 7 months.
Oh, my. God.
That is a huge advantage. Now, can they, towards the end of last year, because of their draft position, they had waiver wire priority pretty high because they started out losing games. Rand Carthon didn't really do a lot with that. And they let a lot of players.
Special team guys? No?
Yeah, a few, but they weren't cut, I don't think. Okay. They were already free agents. So, like, when players are waived and have to clear waivers, I don't recall they even claimed anybody.
Oh, because that's when I wanted to get Daniel Jones.
Right.
Like, dang, just take a flyer just to see what it looks like in practice.
Now, Daniel Jones cleared waivers.
That's what I'm saying, but they didn't even put in for him. Though.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is no team did.
I know, but that's why they should have.
Oh, you're saying they just should have.
Should have, yeah.
The reason they didn't is because you have to pay whatever his contract is currently. Oh. So claiming him off waivers, I think you still would have had to pay like $14 million to Daniel Jones.
So that's what the Vikings paid? They let him clear.
They let him clear. Then they went
Well, then after that, they should have naturally, he wouldn't want to come here with Minnesota. Never go. I would have told him, hey, man, you can be our guy next year.
But there are going to be other players and other vets that have to go through waivers. And typically it's a player that has not played a pretty much a full 4 seasons of some sort during their course of their career. So when you're talking about that is a huge way to gain a leg up if you're a team that's in need of back end talent, because this team needs front end talent, but it also needs depth. And the waiver wire is a great way, especially on roster cut down day, right? So that when you're going from 90 to 53, you get the pick of the litter. You get to put in all the waiver claims that you want and get the best of the players that were cut. But those guys matter to the back end of your roster. That's how good teams use the waiver wire priority.
We'll give your example what the Ravens did, right?
Right.
Kind of explain all of that.
Yeah. Deontay Johnson gets traded to the Baltimore Ravens. You cut him. The Texans claim him off waivers. They cut him. The Baltimore Ravens claim him off waivers, and now he's going to be able to go to free agency and maybe get them a comp pick. And if you're wanting A lot of draft picks over these next few years, sometimes claiming people and then letting them walk in free agency the following year is a smart way to build up comp picks. To not and also developing minority coaches and minority GMs is a great way to develop comp picks. So at the end of the day, this is very, very important information. The next 7 months, at the very least, the Tennessee Titans have the number one overall waiver wire priority. That is super important for the future of this team.
Oh, yeah, that's actually kind of exciting. I know it doesn't sound exciting, but you get to pick from the litter, and you say, oh, well, it's from somebody got cut. Well, they could have got cut for numerous or waived for numerous reasons. It could be salary, it could be anything. Doesn't mean the guy can't really play. And guess what? You need players all over the place. So whether they're a role player, a starting player, or a bridge player, I think till you develop, a young player, I think all, players on deck really helps it.
So, the Panthers last year, they had the number one waiver wire priority. They claimed, looks like 7 players. So they claimed 7 players.
Oh, wow.
So, to me, again, that is... You need to be kind of looking at that kind of stuff. They got Tariq Castro-Fields, Shamar Bartholomew, Keenan Isaac, Lonnie Johnson, Jarrett Kingston, John Radigan, Jamie Sheriff. Some of these guys didn't really do much. But at the end of the day, it's all about building depth, right? Like when you're talking about the Tennessee Titans and struggling on special teams, well, this is a good way to find those special teams players. Very, very important that this does not fly under the radar. 7 months of waiver wire priority. And there are going to be certain players that are cut, between now and March. And some of those guys go through waivers. There's guys that are going to get cut after March. Yeah, really any player that goes on waivers, you have first dibs and first shot to put them on your team. Very important when you're talking about roster building. When we come back, we'll talk more about the Tennessee Titans and the Super Bowl with Coach Mack. Brought to you by Two Rivers Ford, South's most treasured Ford dealer for his weekly Mac Attack. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons. Here on 105 The Zone.
There are a lot of diagnoses out there, and there's a pill for everything. But not all diagnoses are accurate, and not all pills are good for you. Hey, it's Blaine Bishop. And when you get a diagnosis for European auto repair, make sure you get a second opinion before you make a major decision. And Eurofix is the home for second opinions. So before you spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars on European vehicle repair from a diagnosis, go to Eurofix. It could not only save your vehicle's life, but could actually save you from a lot of stress that can ruin your weekend. And life's too short to get stressed out and angry about your vehicle. So be happy and go to Eurofix. And at Eurofix, you get a free 15-minute no-wrench inspection with an estimate at every visit and not high-pressure sales tactics. 3-year nationwide warranty and a free loaner car with every repair appointment. And no dealer pricing is used there. Eurofix, never will you pay dealer pricing. Family owned for 26 years, located in Franklin, Hundred Oaks, Murfreesboro, Belmead, and now Mount Juliet. And all you have to do is just give them a call at 844-EUROFIX. That's right, 844-EUROFIX, or you can visit them online at myeurofix.com. That's myeurofix.com. But always done, Blaze,
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone, powered by all Four Seasons Garage Doors. And you know what that music means? It means it's time for Mac Attack. It's a Tuesday. It's 2:20 p.m. And we got Coach Mac of Titans Radio on with us, and brought to you by Two Rivers Ford, South's most trusted Ford dealer. And Coach Mac, I hope you had a good Super Bowl Sunday. And when it comes to applying lessons learned from the big game, outside of the importance of quarterback, what was your main takeaway from the Eagles versus the Chiefs?
Yeah, Zach, good question. Very good question, very relevant question. And especially now, I think what it really points out is as you start getting deeper and deeper into the playoffs, and really to get there, two things. You stay true to who you are, and then the value of, your bigs on both sides of the line of scrimmage is where your game starts. And let's just start with that. Clearly, what Vic Fangio did, I know Vic very well. He's been at it a long time. And going into it, he said, we can rush and win with 4. So he was able to play, 7 back there in coverage. And when he was playing those match zones, which he did very, very well, anytime you can have 7 to cover 5, you can always have 4 over 3 and 3 over 2 at whatever iteration you want to get to it, however you morph into it. They did a brilliant job. First of all, if you're doing that, Zach, your time to throw has to be shortened down, because even if you're playing a match zone, sooner or later, if they have too much time, they can run through the zone or they can run away from the match, which means basically they're running away from the guy that has matched up to him the way the pattern comes off. They did it as perfect as anybody could do it. And that's the first thing to take away from it. The second thing is they were able to control the line of scrimmage with their offensive line. Their offensive line for the Eagles has always is the number one offensive line in the league. They imposed their will, and you could tell that Spags was selling out to keep Saquon Barkley from winning that game. But in doing so, he gave the quarterback, first of all, a chance when they were playing man-to-man defense. You saw it a lot of times when they were playing cover 5, which is 5 under 2 deep man. That's when the quarterback took off running and got most of his 70 yards rushing. I thought it was an excellent game plan, by the Eagles. They stuck to who they were, but the ability to put pressure and really, really, really dominating pressure. And plus, Kansas City has been kind of playing mix and match with their offensive line all season. It finally caught up to them, which, as we well know, will catch up to you. That's what I took from it.
So what do you think that Andy Reid and the Chiefs could have done differently on offense to try to, once they saw that this train was coming no matter what, that they were going to be able to get home at 4, what can a head coach do in that position to try to mitigate and slow down that rushing attack?
Well, offensively, they could not. They really didn't even try to run the football. That's number one, because when the guys are starting to get off, like you saw what was going on with Philadelphia. They're coming off the ball. Now, that's the way they play. They're coming off the ball. So the first thing that you try to do is, if they are, anytime you are rushing with 4 and you are covering with 7, then the first thing that most offenses try to do, Zach, is run the football. And they did not try that very long. And then what happened is because of the turnovers, Mahomes had 2 devastating turnovers. That can flip a game really quick, because now both turnovers they score touchdowns off of, and now they're behind the chains and they're behind the score. So the thing that they didn't need to do before they did anything else was not turn the ball over, and we saw how devastating that can be, and it was.
We're on with Coach Mac for his weekly Mac Attack. He's from Titans Radio, of course, and brought to you by Two Rivers Ford, South's most trusted Ford dealer.
Well, Coach, I'd love to get your perspective on what are your thoughts of Jalen Hurts today after not only the season in that game, but, is he a top 15 quarterback in the National Football League, or right around that 15 range? because he is talented, but for whatever reason, people don't want to put him in that category of elite. And I'm not saying he's elite either, but I tell you what, in the big moments, that's 2 times now I've seen in the Super Bowl, win or lose, that he's performed and stepped up and the moment wasn't too big.
Blaine, I think you are 100% correct. And look, what Jalen Hurts has been through in his career. I mean, he's been the man. He's had the job taken away from him. Mm-hmm. He transferred and then competed again and put himself back on top. I agree with you. And to me, I think he's a top tier quarterback in the league for this reason. The first reason is he's resilient. He's a very, very resilient football player. The other thing is people really underestimate. They underestimate his ability, his ability to throw, and they also underestimate his running ability. Mm-hmm. He's a really, really strong runner. He's a strong runner. Now, is he a 4-3 guy when he gets in open space? No. But he can eat stripes. But the thing that I've always liked about him, I've always thought that he was a mentally tough guy, which I think goes a long way. You played with one of the most mentally toughest guys that's ever played the game as a quarterback. It's important. It's important in the locker room. It's important in the huddle. And I agree with you. I don't think he gets enough credit for the type of quarterback he is and the way that he can carry a team when they need him.
I know you talked about, the game was won in the trenches naturally, like always. And, all the skill guys get all the credit, whether you're on offense or defense. But how surprised are you that they were that dominant in the trenches? Specifically, you talked about the defense, but just on both sides of the ball. I know they could be number 1, number 2, but I didn't think they would dominate like that.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And you and I both have been on some dominating defense in our careers. Dominating. And the feeling when you just know on either side of the football at the line of scrimmage where you are able to get over on your opponent pretty quick. But I agree with you, Blaine. I didn't think that they would be that dominant that consistently. Mm-hmm. I mean, and when they started going after the quarterback, I mean, the offensive line for Kansas City, especially on the 2 edges, were really bad. And, you had Jalix Hunt, who's a kid out of Houston Christian that is a good athlete. But, I mean, he was walking the tackles back in right, and the quarterback had no chance. And seriously, normally what Mahomes has been able to do in those situations is wiggle his way out of it and then hold on to the ball when he was moving. They were collapsing so fast on him. And then they had guys that were athletic enough to run him down. It was a tsunami that was on him. That's not like any rush he's seen this season. And I didn't think it would be that dominant. Jeremiah Washburn, Jim Washburn's son, is the outside backer defensive end coach there. Mm-hmm. And you know what Wash was. And so to me, that is just another indication of if you can rush, and not only just rush, that you can get home in under 2.3 seconds with 4 people, that is a defensive coordinator's dream.
What were your thoughts on Mahomes with that kind of pressure? I felt like he was rattled even early on. A lot of people talking about, he may have a little voodoo curse on him. I would say it was an eagle flying by, but but hey, man, I had never seen him like that. And I always thought going out of halftime, especially with Andy Reid, being that I've played under him, is that they usually make adjustments at halftime or something, or Mahomes figures it out some kind of way, and it makes the game close. After that first drive, I knew, the Chiefs are in trouble because Andy's gotten out coached and Mahomes can't find a crease, and he can't run anywhere and make magic happen like he typically does.
I couldn't agree with you more. I thought he looked more rattled than I've ever seen him on the big stage. He just looked rattled, and I agree with you. And here was the issue too. He was turning the ball over, which is so unusual for him. It's so unusual for him. They've normally been able to at least. I mean, I know all of the 1-score games they've come back and won, but they were able to keep it within 1 score. They got down. I mean, that thing was 24 to house so fast. They were swimming in a pool that they had not been in for a long time. because basically, I mean, really, that ball game was 40-6 before any. I mean, the other two didn't really count. So that was a dominating beatdown.
One more question, and it just made me think about the Titans. Every time I'm watching a game, an NFL game, I'm thinking Titans. And I was looking at their quarterbacks. You know, one, a franchise quarterback, one was a second rounder. Nobody thought he would be this good. So it made me think, okay, whether you're a free agent or you draft a quarterback, when you sit in those rooms and you're talking about and having these conversations about quarterbacks, whether you're drafting them or not, do you draft your quarterback to fit your scheme? Or do you draft your quarterback and your coach, or do you draft the best quarterback for the organization?
Well, and the thing about, and I'm glad you asked that, because I've been involved in vetting 3 quarterbacks personally in my career. I mean, vetting them from the start coming out. And I would never, ever make it. I mean, you know, I would never, ever make a decision on a quarterback coming out of college unless I had spent a lot of time talking with them personally. Because you've got to dig and find out what type of person it is to begin with. Because if you're talking about a guy that you're thinking of drafting a quarterback, they all, I think, display some sort of physical ability, or you wouldn't be talking to them. But I think getting to know the person as a quarterback, because that mindset is so critical. So critical. They're all going to need development. So I think before you go scheme, before you go anything else, you dig into the mind of that guy you're considering taking as to is he going to be the guy that's going to be able to handle everything that comes with being a quarterback in this league? Because physically he's going to have some gifts, or I wouldn't even be talking to him. So I would never, ever take a quarterback unless I had sat down with the decision makers and really try to find out what type of a person this is, because leadership can be, you know, strewn over a lot of different area, but you got to find out what the guy's made of pretty quick. I think both of those guys are made of the right thing. And so to me, that's what you have to find out. That's critical, Blaine, with quarterbacks.
No doubt about it. We're on with Coach Mack giving us the Mack Attack.
Well, and sticking with that theme, you know, what is the Titans scouting department up to every day between now and the NFL Combine? Is it more about doing a first pass as a group through the information that the area scouts have gathered, or is it about trying to set the big board as much as possible before the Combine?
No, they're locked in. They're locked in, you know, from probably, I would say, at 6:30 or 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening now, as a group going over this draft. Because, you know, you've got some new people at the top, you know, blending with some people that have already been there. They are in a bunker right now. They are locked up because the next time they'll come out for air is for the Combine. So they are going through every one of these prospects now. It takes a while, and I mean, I lived in those draft meetings for 31 years. This time of year, it takes a lot of time to go through every person and look. They don't just look at highlight tapes of players. You know, they're watching consecutive game tapes. I mean, they're locked in right now. So if you want to see any of those guys, you're going to have to wait. And like we say in Texas, they're in there till can't. You know, so the first time the sun comes up to after it goes down. That's what they're doing right now.
How many prospects can they get through in that process in one day? I mean, because like you said, they're in there for, and Mike Berganza even said they're in there for roughly 12 hours a day. But, you know, when you're watching all of this game film and these cut-ups and talking about it and having these discussions, I mean, how many players do you typically get to go throughout that day?
It depends on the format that you have on it. It's been different everywhere that I've been, but the thing that you do have to do, Zach, is you have to grind, and the grind is sitting there and going through it. In other words, you've got very, very regimented breaks. I mean, you're in there to go through it. So I think the numbers, you know, vary by position depending on what the strength of the draft is. But it's a grind. When you're settled in to do that, that's all you are doing. So the numbers vary depending on the position and the strength of the draft at the time.
Brian Callahan talked about one of the biggest challenges that any head coaches face, throughout that first year of being a head coach is the messaging you send to the players on a weekly basis. He says something that no one really ever talks about when it comes to becoming a head coach, of things that you kind of learn on the job. Talk about why that messaging is so important, and also talk about why is it one of the more difficult parts of the job.
Well, and I agree. I agree with that because when I became a head coach after I'd been a coordinator, and as a coordinator, you're always looking for ways to motivate your players. Other than presenting the game plan, you're always looking for things that you can do. As a head coach, you've got to deliver a message on a weekly basis. And that message can not only be depending on who you are playing, it depends on what's going on with your roster also at the time. I spent a lot of time, preparing the times that I was going to stand up, and it's different times. The first of the week is different than it is during the middle of the week, and then it's completely different, on a Saturday night in your last team meeting before the ball game. You spend a lot of time on that. I mean, I would make notes. I would go back and look. I would try to get a feel, from my coaches and also from my players, especially the leadership council that I had. Where are we at right now? What are we feeling? That it takes time. It takes time, and I agree. And I agree with what he's saying, because you want to have on-point messaging, but the messaging can change as the tone and the timbre changes depending on what's happening during the season. It takes a lot of time to do that, and you want to be as concise and as to the point as you can, and that changes weekly.
Can you just quickly talk through the difference between an NFL analyst's big board, like a Dane Brugler, Mel Kiper, Todd McShay, and a team's big board? Because I think a lot of fans are kind of confused on how different those two things tend to be in the NFL.
Yeah, well, I mean, in a team, you've got a whole group of scouts, that are looking, that have worked completely a year ahead. Now, when the business of the scouting and the business, I would say, of just reporting on the draft has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't know. I know that I don't know how big the staffs are. And depending on how those people you mentioned are getting their information, a lot of those guys have got very good contacts and are information gatherers. And then there are others that that sit and grind tape, and I don't know, how many people they do having him do that. But when you have a huge staff in the National Football League, that is all they do, and you've got people. I've worked on clubs where you had a person that all they did was travel all year. They were on the road all year, a year before, trying to find out at hometowns and in schools everything you can about a prospect. So I don't know how deep the other people that do it other than teams can get on all of that stuff. But when you're with a club, you have got a massive amount of information just because you've got a massive amount of people that's all they do.
And don't teams also build it horizontally, not just vertically?
Well, I've already started on my horizontal and vertical. You've got to have that. You've got to have that because you can't. You never know, Zach, when you're on the clock in the draft, how the draft's going to come out. You have an idea, and that's what helps you. I mean, I've worked the phones, for 30 years as far as proposing trades, making trades. Remember the chart that Jimmy Johnson originally came out with that they tweaked over the years because of the salary cap now, because when Jimmy made that thing, there was no salary cap, and there were no compensatory picks. It's a big difference now. But anyway, all those types of things, you've got to have. That's where Rhett and I are right now. Is we're starting just the base shot of putting a vertical and a horizontal board together, because what you do, you don't put people in just particular positions on the draft. You put them in pods. Because then you compare pods not only vertically with what's going on in a position group, but horizontally how it relates to the whole draft at the time. It's the only way to do it, because you're not just picking one position when your time comes up. You're looking at how the board is talking to you as you start to move as to where the pods coincide.
Well, Coach Mack, before we let you go, I guess we all know how valuable the first pick is of the draft by the Titans. But naturally, we haven't been talking about how valuable the second round pick is, since it's such a high pick. I think it's the third pick in the second round. Kind of take us through, you don't have to tell us like past history of what those have been worth, but how typically, how much calls do you get in the second round and you have a high pick? Because a lot of people are trying to move up and get that guy they thought was going to be a first rounder. So how valuable do you view that high second round pick as well?
Well, it's very valuable. It is valuable to your point, Blaine, which is a good point, and people understand. Now, look, you've got three teams that are at the top of the draft that had the same record. So you will go for those three teams. The Titans have the first pick. But then as you go to the second round, it's like a snake draft.
Yes, the third pick, right?
It goes to the third, and then it'll revert back to the second, and then back to the first pick in every round. So when you have that, that's extremely valuable. You make a very good point. It's extremely valuable as players start to come off the board. As players start to come off the board, and your chances, the picks start to diminish with people looking up. And then when they start to say, we need this player right now, that's when it's so valuable to be sitting at the top of every round. Mm-hmm. The top three of every round, now you've got a chance to start, fielding a lot of calls if the board starts falling the way that some people don't think it will, or that start falling the way that you think it will. But to your point, having a top three pick in every round in a draft is extremely valuable.
Well, that will do it for us. We appreciate your time here, Coach Mack. Brought to you by Two Rivers Ford, of course, weekly Mac Attack of Titans Radio. And how far along are you in your draft process with Rhett?
Well, we've been doing it since the season's been over with. But what it takes is, we went to the Senior Bowl just like you did.
Yep.
Got a look at those guys. But there's 110 guys down there maybe. And so now you're getting ready to go to the combine where there's going to be 300 guys, invited there. And then, I've got contacts around this league that are pretty good, but watch a lot of tape. So we're still a ways away, but we're at least starting to flesh some of it out. But then when we add all those other guys in, because there'll be 300 guys at the combine, then you've got to start rearranging some things. So we're in pretty good shape because we've been doing it together for so long, but we're a long way from being finished.
All right. Well, we appreciate it, Coach Mack, and we look forward to more draft talk as the year goes on.
Guys, love talking to you. See you.
Appreciate it, Coach.
When we come back, we'll talk more about the NFL draft and the Tennessee Titans. This is Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here at 105 The Zone.
As an athlete myself, I know how frustrating nagging pain or injuries can be to my performance. So if you have a nagging pain or injury that's been keeping you from fully enjoying your favorite sports or activity, now is the time, and spring is a great time to make this happen. And Edge Peptide and Hormone Therapy has multiple regenerative treatment options for treating, healing, and recovering from your injuries or pain. And Edge has everything from PRP treatments to stem cell therapy. And Edge focuses on your body's natural ability to heal, and the ultimate goal is always to avoid surgery if possible. Reduce joint pain and inflammation, promote tissue repair, and even improve mobility and function. And call Edge for a comprehensive consultant to create the perfect treatment plan for you at some of the most aggressive pricing you'll find in the area. So spend this month restoring so you can thrive the rest of the year. All you have to do is go to edgepeptide.com online. Yes, that's edgepeptide.com, or just give them a call today at 615-724-1878. That's 724-1878.
Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here at 105 The Zone, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Store, 615-737-1045. You want to get in on the conversation. Last call for phone calls before we head out for the day. And I want to kind of touch on what Coach Mack said about the quarterback situation, the draft situation. So when you asked your question about, do you pick a quarterback that fits the scheme or do you pick a quarterback that's best for the franchise? Mm-hmm. I thought you gave some good information and insight, but we didn't really get where he kind of landed on that. So where do you land on that? Because, obviously it kind of goes back to that Vince Young, Matt Leinart discussion, right? They kind of drafted what they felt, well, I guess you could say ownership forced what they felt was best for the franchise, but it necessarily was not a scheme fit at the time. So how do you land on that?
Well, for me, when you're talking about that high, when you're talking about first, second pick, you go for the most talented player.
Yeah.
Now, if it's the quarterback, naturally, in this case, you want to make sure they have the right mindset and is the type of quarterback that can be flexible in different varieties of his game. And I like players like that. I don't just like the one-trick pony guy. So not just at quarterback, any position, because that, to me, then helps disguise a lot of different things on what you're trying to prepare for against that guy or that team. So I would want the one to have I think Ward has more of a higher ceiling. I think he's more talented and gifted and just a kind of a natural thrower. I think Shedeur fits the scheme and system, what we do here. That's what prompted that question. And he's a more accurate, precise guy. So to me, that fits Callahan's scheme. But in this case, I just think he's a little more talented enough to be a difference and that he can fit in any scheme if you coach him up correctly. So that's kind of where you're at. When you're talking about the higher picks, from what I've learned over time, you got to go with the more talented player.
I think that's where I'm at too, especially when I look at these two prospects. Yes, Shedeur Sanders is the better fit, but that does not mean Cam Ward doesn't fit.
Right.
He's just one player's the better fit. But when you start looking at all the information you get, when you start watching the film, Cam Ward does provide you more on a per-snap basis than probably what Shedeur Sanders does. And they have similar hang-ups and stuff like that. But there is a lot to like about Cam Ward's tape when you start diving in that reaches a little bit of a higher level than Shedeur Sanders. And so when you start getting into it, I start leaning more and more as the more tape I watch, the more analysis I go through. I start leaning more towards he may not be the best fit, but he's still a good fit for what Brian Callahan wants to do. And to me, I just kind of look at it like I'm kind of all in on Cam Ward. I'm kind of getting there to where maybe not against Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, but I've been a big Shedeur Sanders guy all year. And the more that I start diving into the all 22 of these games, the more I'm like, I don't know, I kind of like Cam Ward more.
Yeah, he definitely does some things that give you some wow factor.
Yeah.
There's no doubt on some of his throws. So, but he also gives you some form of levis, and you wonder, that's why I said the mind, and Coach Mack brought it up, when you're talking about the quarterback, will you get in harm's way? Will you do some of these things in the league? And sometimes lessons not learned until you actually do it in a game. I think that's what happened with Levis this year with that kind of coaching. It was like, oh, man, I can't even try to do anything. And sometimes it was even just to slide. Remember how long it took him to slide? So some of those things are taught. Some are easier to transform in your game and some not. So, but you have the biggest, chances of maybe, I'm not going to say the word bust, but maybe disappointment there with the higher ceiling guy. So do you go that conservative route? I think that, to me, when you get started in the third, fourth round, you go to more conservative. But when you get to that first pick, you got to go with the higher ceiling guy.
Yeah. Oops. Yeah, that's exactly where I feel. All right, just real quick. We were told a lot that this is going to be a boring Super Bowl. Nobody's going to watch it. This is the worst matchup.
Yeah, Chiefs fatigue.
Chiefs fatigue was going to catch up for everybody. Super Bowl on Fox averages 127.7 million viewers, the most in the Super Bowl era.
Record.
137.7 million viewers as a peak.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened to everybody not wanting to watch the Super Bowl? And who didn't want to watch the Chiefs and the Eagles play?
There was nothing else on.
Is that the excuse? I like it.
No, I don't know. I have no idea. I would assume it feels that way as though nothing else was on at that time.
Yeah.
But I was actually intrigued that was the highest. I think they said last year was the second highest.
Yeah, I believe it's just going to continue to be that way because of obviously the population grows, but also because the popularity of the game grows. You got more people. It's always going to.
You think more people watching overseas?
I would say probably so. Let's go to Tommy who, real quick. We'll close out the show. Tommy, you're on with Blaine and Zach.
Yeah, I'm just so shocked. The best quarterback I saw this year was Will Howard, and I don't see how they got him as a third rounder. I mean, they're not always right, and I think they're missing the boat on him. Remember, we took Dylan Reagans in the third round, and Trey Smith went in the sixth round to Kansas City. So, can y'all tell me why you think Will Howard's so far down the list? I'll hang up and listen. Thanks.
Thanks, Tommy. I haven't gone through my my Will Howard all 22 yet. He's a little bit on the back burner for me, but I do think that Will Howard is probably the most likely of all those, day two quarterbacks, I guess you could say, that's going to rise as the process goes further along. There's always a quarterback that starts moving up the ranks, and I think Will Howard will be a guy just because of what he put on tape in the biggest moments of the biggest year against that competition that he did. I think he eventually will move up those ranks.
Yeah, and he's athletic. He can move. He's big. He's got a strong arm, so he's accurate. I mean, he's playing with some great players as well. So you got to see him in the biggest stage. I think that was huge. I think it's going to benefit him. I think really, I'd love to see him right next to Jackson Dart. I mean, I think it's already playing that Jackson Dart is the guy who's going to move up, regardless of if it's deserving or not. It's kind of pre-planned. But, yeah, I like to see all those guys. I said I like the Louisville guy because I said he throws on time. He was well coached there as well with Brom, who was a former NFL player, and all their quarterbacks do really well. The other kid, O'Connell's there, is with the Raiders, wasn't even, he was a walk-on. Yeah. And he ended up getting drafted. So, yeah, I think so. Yeah, so
it'll be interesting to see how this quarterback class shakes up. We'll keep track of where these quarterbacks move. Yeah, I love Kyle McCord. Seth Hennigan. Don't forget our boy Seth Hennigan.
Oh, right.
That's our show quarterback, Seth Hennigan. Yeah. Cover 2's official draft quarterback, Seth Hennigan. That will do it for us. This has been Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop and Zach Lyons here on 105 The Zone. 3HL's up next, and in the meantime,
and in between time.
Peace.
Peace.